Thank you so much for joining us today for this consulting onboarding webinar. We're going to be covering a lot today where Clora and your consulting career is concerned. So I'm going to go ahead and kick us off with a little introduction for myself, for our co-host today, and then I'll run you through our agenda so you know exactly what we're going to talk about. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Alrighty. My name is Emily Villari, and I am a customer success manager here at Clora. My role as a CSM is to support you in your goals on the platform, as well as monitor the health of your engagement with employers when you do start matching with opportunities. And I'll be going a little more in depth on my role as your partner later on in the webinar. But joining me today is Libby Van Buskirk, the manager of the Department of Customer Success here at Clora, my lovely boss. She will be monitoring the chat, which you should use if you experience any audio or video issues, let us know there. And she'll also be monitoring the Q&A section, which you can use to enter your questions for us. She'll hop on at the end to guide us through some Q&A as well. So for now, let's go through our agenda. First, I'd like to take a minute or two to introduce Clora for all of those who are new to the platform. The second item on our agenda, we'll see us dive into our profile on Clora, where I'll go over some best practices and we'll cover things like hourly rate. From there, we'll step towards item number 3, finding consulting opportunities on Clora and the application and hiring process. And the very last topic I'll cover with you is what to expect once you've been hired. So I'll break down your timesheets portal, invoicing timeline, and of course, meeting the Clora team. Now, items 2 and 3 on our agenda are going to see us on the Clora platform itself. So we will be doing a little bit of screen hopping today. So I ask that you bear with me. And then at the end, of course, I will open up the digital floor for any questions you might have. But if anything pops up during this session, please feel free to go ahead and write into the Q&A section while it's still fresh in your mind, and we'll circle back to it at the end. So let's go ahead and get started. A little bit about us. Clora was founded in 2015 by our CEO, Rahul Chaturvedi, who, after spending many years in the life sciences industry, both as a consultant and a full-time employee, decided to change the way hiring takes place in the industry. Clora's true north is very simple. We believe that finding the right talent should never delay bringing therapies to market and providing value to patients. And we endeavor to do that by shortening the time it takes to get consulting. And that, my friends, if you will, is our elevator pitch. Now, before I move us over to the Clora platform, I want to share some fast facts with everyone, information we believe is crucial to your experience consulting through Clora. Number 1, we pre-vet employers and their consulting opportunities, or as we like to call them, projects, for timeline, urgency, and most importantly, budget. Now, it's important to keep in mind that we cannot predict things like loss of funding and non-approval, and unfortunately, those things do happen. But we take steps before you even know about the opportunity to ensure that projects you apply for through Clora have reliable funding. Number 2, projects sourced through Clora can fill your calendar however you see fit, from 5 hours a week to 40 hours a week, from 2 months long to over a year long. When we talk about flexibility with your calendar and with your existing book of business outside of Clora, we are referring to the many varying time commitments available across projects. And then last but not least, and certainly my favorite, you keep 100% of your hourly rate. I'm going to leave you with that little nugget of information, but don't worry, we're going to circle back to that in a little while, I promise. So I'm going to shift gears now and move us into item number 2 on our agenda and head over to the Clora platform. This is the Clora landing page. Now, to log in, you're going to click on For Consultants up here and then select the Sign In button. Now, this is a demo website, so all the projects you'll see here are not actually available, but they are inspired by real opportunities. And at the end, I'll actually give you a peek at some of the live projects we're currently sourcing for. Excuse me. So we're going to start with your profile, and we're going to navigate to it in the right-hand corner of the screen. And we're going to take a look at mine. Now, your profile is very crucial to your job search on Clora. This page offers you the ability to deconstruct your resume in ways other consulting platforms don't yet allow, and I'll be touching on why that's so important as we break down this page. Now, on the left-hand side of the screen, there's a place for you to upload your resume and share your LinkedIn profile. And it's important for me to highlight here that there is no auto-populating from these two things onto your profile, except for what we call tag suggestions, which you can see by these little blue wands that I'll touch on in a minute. So after uploading your resume and sharing your LinkedIn profile, you're going to want to start with your bio under technical experience, and we recommend between 1 to 2 paragraphs in length. Now, beneath that, you're going to break down your experience and expertise in the form of tags, and we want you to be very specific here. Functional areas is the most important tag on your profile. It indicates to us your area or areas of expertise. It's the first filter Clora uses to match you to projects. So for the sake of my profile, I've added clinical operations, but I've got a suggestion here for clinical development. I'm actually going to add that because I do technically have experience in that area as well. Now, this section allows for 3 tags in total, and the functionality is very user-friendly. So for example, we want to add project management, you can do so by simply searching for it and then clicking save, and it'll populate there. Now, the below sections describe your proficiencies as well as your interests. So what kind of product technologies are you capable of leveraging? What diseases and indications are you experienced working with and would like to work with again in the future? This section of your profile is really your opportunity to tailor the types of projects that Clora keeps you in the loop about, the types of projects you are invited to apply for. So this little wand here has a few suggestions for me. And let's say I have experience in immunology and vaccines, but not pediatrics. I'll just remove that one and add those suggestions. And this is me effectively building out my profile. We're really bulking it up here. Now, you don't have to add any of the suggestions. If none of these fit your expertise, your skill, your history, you can just decline them and they'll go away like that. Now, back on, now below that, we've got past roles. So you will undoubtedly have more listed here than myself, but the functionality of building this section out is pretty user-friendly. You'll fill out everything here and then add another role and go and so forth. Now, back on the left-hand side, we've got languages, language preferences, certification, and education. Now, if you have 10 plus years worth of experience, you don't really need to focus on dates here. However, I will emphasize that above that, the accomplishments section is worth spending some time building out. We've gotten a lot of feedback from employers that let us know that this section is sometimes the very first thing they look at when they review your profile. And then above that, we have work preferences. So I'll go ahead and set myself to consulting, as that's 99% of the roles we currently source for. And we come to hourly rate. So based off of my experience, I believe I'm willing to work, from 180 to 230. Now, before we dive too deep here, I have a side note for you. If you ever have any questions about what you think you should be charging, we can provide insight into current market trends. You need only ask, and you can use this live chat button in the lower right-hand corner of the screen to start a conversation with a real person. I promise it might even be me, depending on when you write in. And this chat function is available across the site, no matter what page you're on. Just make sure you're logged in. Now, this is the general range for us to understand your minimums and maximums for rates. We do know and understand that your rate really depends on the work and the opportunity itself. And when you do apply, you get a chance to set a rate specific to that project. But for the sake of this example, let's say I sign on to work with a company at $200 an hour. That is exactly the hourly rate I will be paid. Clora operates off of a take rate, but that take rate is actually added on top of your hourly rate, not subtracted. And that is a fee that employers are responsible for paying. So your take-home pay will never be affected by this. If you're earning $200 an hour, that's exactly what's going to go into your pocket at the end of the invoicing timeline. So below that, I've marked myself as yes, I'm available to consult. However, perhaps I'm only looking for 25 hours a week. Now, this section of your profile lets us know about your availability. So if you're working with 3 clients and you can't take on any more work, just let us know by selecting no under availability. Or if you're working with 3 clients and you can only spare 5 hours a week, you can let us know by adjusting the hours you're available for. Otherwise, we'll share projects with you that might not fit your schedule at the time. Now, you will likely have a progress bar up here. We recommend adding details until that progress bar disappears or at least hits 90%. This profile you're looking at now is a good jumping off point for you. Yours should be at the very least this dense. Now, the last thing I'll cover here is your public profile settings and your private view. So all consultants working through Clora are blinded, meaning the employer cannot see your contact details, your resume, or your name. So to see what that will look like, you're just going to click on View Public Profile, and you'll see that my name, my resume, my LinkedIn profile, my location have all been removed. And so this is what the employer will see when you are submitted to an opportunity. So back into private view, this switch down here is a little different. Flipping this button to public will enable employers to find your profile and invite you to apply to their open projects. This is currently only available for roles in clinical operations. It's a new feature. We're still building it out to expand the functional areas included within it, but we recommend, if you have experience in ClinOps, to make sure your profile is set to public. Now, as you continue on in your consulting career and work on growing out your resume, it's important to also keep your profile on Clora up to date, so we're still sending you projects that interest you. So that wraps up agenda item number 2, and we're going to move on to number 3 now, finding projects and the application process. So I'll start by navigating to opportunities in the menu bar. Now, when employers identify consulting needs in their pipeline, they create a project post, much like this one, outlining the necessary skills and responsibilities, logistics like timeline and qualifications to create a profile that best represents exactly your role as a consultant. So something to keep in mind here is that while you are blinded to the employers are blinded to you as well. So when I bring you through the application process, I'll highlight at what point you'll learn the name and a little bit about the company you're applying to work with. And then once that project is live on the Clora platform, like we're seeing here, Clora uses matching algorithms to find consultants with relevant skills and experience. And that's done by combing through all the consultant profiles on Clora to identify relevant tags. And that is why being detailed about your expertise and your skills and keeping your profile up to date is so crucial. This is how Clora helps match you to consulting opportunities. If you are selected to apply for a project, you'll be sent an email inviting you to submit your resume and answer a few questions. This at most takes a few minutes, but you can actively look for roles yourself. So under the opportunities page, we have 3 tabs: open, upcoming, and invites. Open opportunities house all the live projects available currently, all of which tend to have an ASAP or near future start date. Under upcoming, you can see roles that only have future start dates. And under invites, you can see those clinical operation projects employers have invited you to apply for. So if you think back to that private public button I mentioned on your profile earlier, if you have it set to public, employers can search for you and invite you to apply. Invites will land here as well as in your email. Now, I'm going to shift gears. I'm going to take you through the application process. So there are 2 buttons at the bottom of this post. If you happen to know someone who's a good fit for this role, you can actually use our referral program to invite them to apply. And if they are matched to the project, you will receive a $500 bonus. So something nice to keep in mind. That person will have to have a consultant profile on Clora, so they will have to sign up should they decide to apply. But as you know, that's free to do. Now we're going to click on View Application. Actually, let's go through a different one. We'll click on Apply Now, and then we'll click on Start Application. So there are 2 ways to start the application process: finding a role yourself or by being asked to apply, but either way, it begins here. So like I previously mentioned, this shouldn't take too long. You'll answer between 1 and 3 questions, give some examples about past experiences and how you might meet the requirements of certain roles. Your resume should already be uploaded. And then an operations fulfillment associate, or as we affectionately call them, an UFA, will review the submission, and then they will contact you to talk more about the opportunities criteria. So this could be a phone call or a video call, and it could last between 10 and 15 minutes, and it can consist of the UFA asking about your background, specifically where it relates to the project, and double checking things like your availability, rate, travel preferences, if applicable. It is during that conversation you will learn the name of the company you are applying to work with. If you are a good match for the project, you'll be asked to submit a proposal, and we're going to take a look at what that looks like now. So we're in the My Applications tab, which is where you can sort of track where all of your live projects are at. So you've submitted a proposal, you've been asked to, or you've submitted your resume, you've been asked to draw up a proposal. And I want to take you through exactly what that looks like so you can understand what to expect. All proposals have 4 sections: responsibilities, experience, certifications, and logistics. Now, before we take a closer look at each of these, I want to pause for a second here. If you are being asked to submit a proposal, you are at most one of 5, on average, probably one of 3 applying in that round. This is, in our opinion, worth highlighting because you are being submitted with a pile of 20, 30, or 40 other candidates. The employers will really have time to sit down and review your experience. So be sure to carve some time out when you compile a proposal later down the line. Now, responsibilities are relatively straightforward. Are you capable of fulfilling the project's listed responsibilities, each of which is outlined here? You'll want to expand on all of those. And then you'll also notice that the project post is directly to the left of the proposal draft for easy reference. You'll then answer more pointed questions about your experience in therapeutic areas, regulatory pathways, disease indications, and so forth. You'll want to list examples here as well. You'll talk a little bit about your professional past experience, and your resume, if uploaded to your profile, will be auto-populated here. Then you'll detail any certifications necessary for the role, which I'm sure you know may vary depending on the project and the skills required. And then finally, you'll clarify logistics. Now, during your call with the UFA, you will likely discuss rate if you are asked to fill out a proposal. Now, like the UFA is conducting a review with you, that UFA has also done the same thing with the project you're applying for. So before this is even taken live on the platform, before you're even able to review it, you'll recall I mentioned earlier, this project has actually already been vetted. So that fulfillment associate, that same person you're talking to, will be very knowledgeable on the company's rate and what other consultants are billing at. But you can also refer to your range here and what you feel you would be comfortable billing. So answer questions like, are you available to meet this? You know, does this conflict with another project or another company you've worked with? And then you'll enter in your hourly rate. There's also a section here if you have any questions for the employer as well. Now, this is the employer's first view of you as a potential hire. So you should take a minute here and double check your proposal before submitting, make sure you're happy with everything. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the My Applications tab. And you'll be able to see that when you submit, it'll move from draft to submitted, and you can review past proposals here. So let's fast forward a little bit. The employer has reviewed your proposal, and we typically try to see that review period happen between 1 and 5 days. So you'll have an answer soon enough on whether or not they want to interview you. And let's say they do. Congratulations. We've released a new scheduling feature that I'm very excited to take you through. So when you are invited to interview, you will get an email that looks like this. So interview requested, select a slot within 24 hours. Now you can either click on select an interview time and it will take you here, or you can simply log in and click on your interview underneath your My Applications tab. So I'm going to go ahead and book an interview with you guys so you can see exactly how it works. It's very straightforward. We're just going to follow the prompts one at a time. So select your time zone, and you'll see that the employer has actually already selected a few dates and times that they're available. So let's say I'm available on Wednesday the 2nd, and let's say 12:30 works for me. Now you can either send time and then you'll be scheduled to interview on that date and time, or if none of those dates or times work for you, you can click I did not find a day and time that works for me, and then we'll step in and sort of help find a middle ground for everyone. Now, after your first interview, the employer may want to schedule a second so you can meet the rest of the team or another hiring manager perhaps. But if they want to hire you, we'll populate a statement of work for you and the employer to review and sign. And this will actually transition us perfectly into agenda item number 4, what to expect once you've been hired. So both parties have signed, your dedicated customer success manager has introduced themselves and conducted formal introductions, and you and the employer are free to begin working together. So the SOW is taken care of, all very exciting. It's time now to invoice for all of your hard work. You will invoice for your time on a monthly basis through the My Timesheets portal up here in the menu. If you're new to the platform, this page will be empty, so don't worry, that's completely normal. As soon as you match on a project, you'll be able to see what I'm seeing here. So we recommend keeping track of your work on a weekly basis, but I know that if you've been consulting for a while, you probably have your own working habits, but the interface is pretty straightforward. You can add general notes or comments on your time over the past month working with that employer here. And then beneath that, you'll actually add lines of work per day. So you can add multiple lines for the same day and break up your tasks that way, or you can just update based on what you do in a day. So perhaps I'll add my webinar. Excuse my spelling errors. We'll do 30 minutes, and you can actually see that the way the platform is designed, it calculates your hours for you. So it does that math, and then below that, you'll enter travel hours if perhaps you were visiting a site or you needed to fly out to a site. Expenses you'll upload beneath that. Now, I will stress here that in your initial discussions with the employer, you should talk about the amount of detail they expect to see in these timesheets. Here's why, and pardon me while I jump back to our slideshow. Each timesheet should be submitted as soon as you finish work for a month, meaning on January 31st, I will update my timesheet and I will submit it to the employer, or you have until the 2nd of the following month to submit. Once it is submitted, the employer then has 5 days to review and approve that timesheet, or within that 5-day period, the employer can request edits, and when we do see this, it's for more detail per line item, which is why I emphasize discussing with your hiring manager the amount of detail they'd like to see on a timesheet, because your payment can be delayed if the hiring manager requests more information. Now, we do regularly remind the employer that you've submitted your timesheet for review. However, if they do not approve it within that 5-day window, a member of our finance team will, so you're not delayed in getting paid. It's very important for us to get your invoice into the right hands in a timely manner. Now, once it's approved, an invoice is immediately generated and sent to the employer's accounts payable team. The employer's team then has 30 days, starting at the point of approval to the timesheet, to pay the invoice. Once that invoice is paid to Clora, it takes between 2 and 3 business days to process out to your bank account. On average, we can see this process take about 45 days, and we're actively working on shrinking that number. And you can help us do that as well by A, confirming how detailed your timesheet should be, and by B, submitting it as soon as you've completed work for that month. So that is the invoicing timeline. Now, stick with me, folks. We're almost done, I promise. Upon starting work with a new employer, you'll meet your Clora team, starting with your dedicated CSM, Customer Success Manager. That CSM may change depending on the employer you're working with, but that person will always be your point of contact for any questions or concerns you might have during your engagements. Whoever your CSM is will schedule regular check-ins with you to ensure you're getting value from the project. These calls are also a really great opportunity for you to review the organization you're working with. That kind of insight is very valuable to us as we work to cultivate a meaningful platform for consultants. You'll also meet a member of the finance team who will facilitate your sign up to a platform called bill.com, and that will allow you to track where your payment's at as well. We've got some account managers, some faces for you, and some faces from our lovely UFAs as well. Now, the very last thing I will leave you with is a preview of a few of those projects Clora is currently sourcing for. So we are looking for an interim bioanalytical manager, which is a commitment of 3 to 4 months at 5 to 10 hours a week. We are also looking for a clinical compliance consultant for a 5 to 6 month long project at 30 to 35 hours a week. So we've got some opportunities here that run, to 8 months. We've got one that runs for a year, 5 to 6 months. These are really good examples of that second fast fact I shared with you at the beginning of the webinar, calendar flexibility. So I wanted to just leave this on the screen for you guys to take a quick peruse. And of course, we can answer any questions you might have, but that does bring us to the end of our agenda and the end of this webinar. I want to thank you very much for your attention. And everyone, don't forget, we're just a click away. If you have questions, you can make use of that live chat feature, or you can reach out to us at support@clora.com. But with that, again, thank you very much. I'm going to formally open up the digital floor for any questions you might have sent in over the course of this webinar, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen and invite Libby back to join us.
Thanks so much, Emily. So we have a number of great questions, and I want to thank everyone who joined us today and also submitted questions today, because we have a number of really good ones here in the chat. So one question that we regularly get here at Clora, and I see a couple different versions of this in the different questions we received today, is Clora mostly focused on clinical opportunities? I'm in discovery or I'm in preclinical. Is Clora a good fit for me? So Emily, I'll hand that one to you.
Yeah, so that's really great questions. I think Clora is a great fit for you. Clora is constantly expanding and growing out the list of companies that we work with to bring you a variation of roles. So what's available now and what's available in a month can really ebb and flow depending on where each company is and their needs for consulting expertise. So I encourage you to sort of keep your book of business and lean on Clora to fill your schedule as needed. And when roles that are interesting to you surface, it is free to sign up. You don't have to pay to keep your profile open. So it's something nice to have just in case something interesting floats across your desk.
Excellent. Now, another question that came in, and there were a couple in this area, was when I'm submitting my hourly rate and I'm entering a range, should I try to keep that range fairly tight? Do I have to enter a range? Is this negotiable? Basically thinking about, if I'm giving my rate up front, does that deter an employer from wanting to work with me?
That's a very great question. So when you submit a proposal, your profile also goes with it. So the employer gets to look at that. And you'll recall that when I shared sort of the private view of your profile, one of the things that disappears is your rate. So we really like it when consultants and employers get to look at each other based off of the work and what's most interesting to them and their skills and expertise. So rate discussions come during the interview process. And one of the things that the UFA does is sort of they have insight into what the company's budget is and sort of their flexibility. And that's a conversation that the UFA will have with you before you go into interviewing. So there's always sort of this background knowledge about where the company's at financially, what kind of budget they have, and what flexibility they have on rate. You can reference that range. That range can be really big. That range is really just for us on your profile. It's so we know what you're interested in seeing. If you'd like to, see something that's 160 an hour, but not something you'd usually take, but you'd be open to it, you can set the low end to 160. If you have a fairly tight budget and really precise expertise and decades worth of experience and prefer to keep things at a tighter range, you can do that as well. It's really just insight for us to know if you would be interested in receiving or being invited to look at this application. And Libby, feel free to add anything in there too.
No, I think that's really well put, Emily. I will add, we are getting some questions in the chat or the Q&A that are very specific to our individual consultants, and they're excellent questions. So what I want to say is we will follow up with some of you via email after the fact to answer those questions, make sure that we're addressing the full scope of what you're asking. But we do have time for, I think, at least one more question. So one of the questions we received, Emily, was around expenses. And if we've negotiated on a project for a daily per diem for our expenses, is that something that I can then put into my timesheet and get paid for?
So yes, that is. So typically how expenses works, and this is especially, this is a much bigger conversation you would have with the employer too, especially if they're expecting you to, fly out for conferences or do site visits. The sort of standard expenses are included in the SOW, and then anything above that typically is just approval through the hiring manager. So it's really important to have, clear lines of communication with the person you're working with most closely, especially if you're doing things like travel, maybe wining and dining some people at a vendor, that kind of thing. Libby, do you want to add anything just in case I might have missed something?
No, I think you handled that really well. And what I will say is we've worked really hard, especially on my timesheets, to make it a system that works well for our consultants. We take your feedback really seriously. And in addition, what I'm really proud of is that we get a lot of great feedback from our consultants about how easy it is to work with. So essentially, when you're submitting expenses, when you're submitting your timesheet, when you're submitting a travel rate, we're here to help. And it's generally a fairly user-friendly system. And that's the feedback we've heard directly from consultants like you. We're at the top of the half hour. So I want to be respectful of everyone's time. And we have a lot of great questions. So I just want to emphasize any questions we didn't get to today, we will make sure to follow up with you individually via email. And we'll also make sure we're going to send a copy of the recording and the webinar to everyone who attended. So if you did ask any questions, or if you have any follow-up questions after this, please feel free to reach out as well to us. But the last question I saw that I think is a really excellent one is related to what if you match with a project, you start working, and how does Clora handle scope creep? So additional responsibilities, maybe a higher level of responsibility that starts to mean that perhaps you should be almost in a new project, or that you feel that you might want to charge additional funds there. What I'll say is, and I'll speak for Emily on this one, is our team checks in with all of our consultants on a regular basis that are engaged in active projects. And what this means is that we make sure to keep track of, is your work aligning to the expectations that you had when you first signed up to start working on the project? And if it isn't, for whatever reason, we're happy to help address that and work through that as well. So this is part of the reason that that communication that we have with you is so critical. We also check in with the employers on a regular basis. So essentially, there's an opportunity for us to help if you are experiencing scope creep. If you're getting more hours than you expected, if you're getting less hours than you expected, that's something that we can definitely help with.
So I think I'd also love to just add something to that. And first of all, thank you very much for introducing me to the phrase scope creep. That is fantastic. I've never heard it called that before. So thank you. One of the things that we talk about when we talk about scope is that it's actually outlined in the SOW, which stands for Statement of Work. And I do apologize if I skipped over defining that. Your scope is often detailed in there. So what's your hourly rate? What's the type of work? What's the term? And so if the scope is changing dramatically, that is something that we can talk about. Mostly what we see is sort of an increase in work. Oh, I started working with this employer and we're getting on really well and they want me to take on some other projects. And usually we have yet to, sort of hear a complaint from a consultant about getting too many hours. But that is exactly as Libby said, something that we have conversations about once a month with your dedicated CSM. So that's why the CSM consultant relationship is so important. We like to keep tabs on how you're doing and how you're feeling. And if we have to have a discussion about the rate that you're working at and the project that you're supposed to be doing and the work you're actually doing, that's the time to do it. And that's why we prefer to do the check-ins once a month. So I hope that clears things up a little bit. And sorry, Libby, I didn't mean to hop in there.
No, I think that's excellent, Emily. I will add, we have so many great questions coming in. So we will be following up via email, but I just want to emphasize that when we also send the recording and the deck from this webinar, there's also an opportunity to follow up with us there. And I think Emily, I'm probably actually repeating things Emily's about to tell you as well. So Emily, I'll hand it back to you now.
I just want to say thank you so much. I wish I could stay on with you guys for another half hour. We do want to be respectful of your time. I'm seeing some questions coming through in the chat and the Q&A, and my immediate response is to just go ahead and answer all of them. Please do not be shy. We're going to download the chat and the Q&A. And we are going to look at all the questions you've submitted and we're going to follow up with each of you. And on top of that, we're going to send you the recording and we're going to send you a guide that I put together. It's a little lengthy, it's about 10 pages, and it just sort of walks you through the platform and pretty much everything we've discussed here today. If you have more questions, you'll certainly have an opportunity to reach out to someone on the CSM team, or again, you can write into support@clora.com or use that chat feature. I believe I'm monitoring it next month anyways, so you can talk to me then as well. I just want to say thank you very much. You've been a really fantastic audience. You've been asking really great questions, and I promise we are going to follow up with you. And again, thank you so much for your time. This has been a real pleasure. And with that, I think we will release you for the rest of your day. I hope you have a fantastic Thursday and a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you so much.